Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is September the 15th, 2017. Have a strong hand, people. All right. Check out cryptohwwallet.com. Get your leather case for your Trezor, all that good stuff. Affiliate links below. And I will show you my beautiful Trezor when I am introducing our awesome guest for This Week in Bitcoin. Because you know I am super pumped today, and it's good to be back with my Trezor, obviously, especially when Bitcoin is going up by like $600 in a day. That's wild roller coaster we're on here. So we've got Tuur Demeester here. We've got Tawanda Kembo, and Paul Capistani is also here. We are going to jump right into this. We have quite a few live viewers. I'm not going to say pound that like button yet because we haven't even gotten started. So Tuur, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here on This Week in Bitcoin. You've been on the show, the other version of our show that comes on every day on a one-on-one interview, but now you're on the big show. So tell us about what is going on here. Are these exchanges really closing? Was the panic justified? Where do you see the price going? I am just letting you take over now for as long as you want to talk.
Well, so when I look at Bitcoin, I think the time frame, like going back literally about 2 years, is helpful. If you go back to like November 2015, Bitcoin hit $250 back then, and then it started building slowly, and eventually by like April 2017, this year, it was like at 1,300. So I mean, at the time, it didn't feel like that was slow. That's probably like a 5x right there. But then from there, we had another huge rally. I guess two of them. One that went up to 3,000 and then down to 1,900, and then the latest one that went up to almost 5,000, and now briefly, corrected down to 3,000. So I think that's kind of important for me to keep an eye on, like where are we coming from? Because a lot of the people that are holding Bitcoin now, I don't know, they might have gotten in at 2,000, they might have gotten in at 3,000. It's a bit hard to tell. There's obviously people that have held on to Bitcoin for a long time. But even if this is a bull market where we go to 10,000 or 7,000 or something like that, before there's maybe a more prolonged bear phase of 6, 12, maybe 24 months. That's definitely possible. I think we're gonna have shakeouts, and I think this is one of them. It's if so that is if, of course, if this is a bull market that's gonna go to 7,000, this is a shakeout. But I do want to be aware that this has been a tremendous rally, right? To go from 250 to 5,000 for any asset is just incredible. And so a lot of people might be looking into getting in at lower prices, or they might be anxious to hold on to their dollar profits, and so more likely to sell. So I guess I'm using a lot of words to say I don't know. Like, I feel less confident to say, get in the big rally. It's happening right now. We're going to rock it to 8,000. That's really anyone's guess, and also mine. Like, I felt a lot more confident to be bullish when it was 300 than I am today. I mean, that doesn't mean long term I'm not super bullish. Like, I'm more bullish than ever on Bitcoin. I think we're going to ride this to $100,000 and beyond. But it's going to get scary in the meantime. There's going to be scary phases and shakeouts that can last, right? That can last months. That is definitely possible. So one pattern that I thought was interesting or useful was something that's called a Jesse Livermore top. Jesse Livermore is one of the most famous traders of all time. He was trading throughout the Great Depression and past that. And so he has in one of his books a pattern that is actually very similar to what we've seen, where we see like an accumulation phase and then a huge rally in 2 phases. And that's what we've seen so far. So I want to be aware that you know, human psychology is really quite universal, and Bitcoin traders and Bitcoin investors are not, you know, are also subject to that. We have the same emotions as any trader, so those patterns can really come back. So yeah, I don't have a very clear picture. I just follow things as they go along. In terms of like where I am with my trading portfolio, I'm about 50-50 now. I think I have a little less Bitcoin than I have in, you know, cash and euros and dollars. And I plan to lighten up a bit more as we head, hopefully we get closer to 4,000, and then I want to sell some more Bitcoin, because I don't think this is over. It's like, yes, we went up $600 in a day, but if you look at even regular markets, stock markets and things like that, the days that have the highest percentage gains, they're often in bear markets, like in 2008, in 1929. That's when you have the highest percentage gains, because it's basically a recovery or a short squeeze right after a big crash. So I don't think this is a sign that, you know, we're now on a rocket to past 5,000.
Now I want to remind everyone that I'm a buy and hold guy, but we got, you know, Tuur, he does it different. He does some trading and everything, and I know everyone's loving that. So I'm not giving advice out here or anything, but he's got some insight into the market, and he's always very interesting. Now I want to follow up with something you said. You said this is probably not over yet. Now, what is this? Is this an overreaction to China news? Is China going to keep on leaking out news? Do we have an overwhelming amount of newbies that are day traders now that are just panicking way too much? Is that about to continue? And another thing is, just because there's bad news in China, is that a reason for every single altcoin to go down too? I mean, it isn't just Bitcoin going down. It's been everything going down. So your thoughts on all that? I put a lot out there. Sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, if you look back to, like, you know, spring this year is when we had the huge Ether rally and altcoin rally, and I think basically in the past 6 months, what's happened is people have lumped together Bitcoin and altcoins, and it's all just investing in cryptocurrency. So anybody new that has come to the fore, they have a very mixed portfolio. They might have, you know, what do I know, 20% Monero, they might have 30% Ethereum, and then 20% whatever. So I think in people's minds, all of that is kind of mushed together as well. And so if we have regulators saying, you know, like ICOs are not legal, at least that was the case in China, they're banned until further notice. And then some other, you know, even the SEC, you know, calling for caution. I saw a note from Holland where the financial minister also commented on ICOs. So if you basically get regulatory heat and that market gets pushed down alongside with the whole, you know, question, like what actual products are being produced, what actual people are involved that have a track record of putting out products that people use in the digital space. You know, the question about whether or not something is vaporware, you know, Bitcoin can basically be thrown out with the bathwater. So I think the whole sector could be, who knows, obviously, I don't know much more than anybody else, but I think it's possible that there's like a cool down, shakeout period, and a lot of these assets you just get brutally beaten if there's no illiquid demand to put a floor under it, right? With Bitcoin, there's illiquid demand. There's people in the world that need to buy Bitcoin to do what they want to do, and they don't have any other options really, no matter what the price of Bitcoin is. And that doesn't really hold for a lot of these assets, right? Especially now, the valuations are extremely speculative.
Oh, right.
So when it comes to this China shakeout just now, I mean, I do think it's pretty big news, and it seems for real. Like right now, the debate is not so much is China shutting down these exchanges. It's more like, you know, are all exchanges going to be shut down indefinitely, or are there going to be like 2 exchanges that will be chosen as like the ones that get a license, and then they can continue to operate? So it's kind of like, how bad is it, rather than is it happening at all? And so I do think that that's what, you know, triggered some of the I guess panic, or like maybe in China itself you could call it that way, because people have to get their funds out. Sorry, just one thing to add. So you have to get your funds out. You can do that either in yuan or in Bitcoin, probably. And then in some exchanges, they give you until the end of the month, right, to do that. And basically you have like a forced run on the bank. Like the government says, you know, you have to liquidate everything, give everything back to your customers. So if it is the case, we'll have to find out that some of these exchanges don't operate on 100% reserve. Maybe they've been playing around with their, you know, their customers' currency. Then there could be a real panic in China where, you know, everybody wants to get out as fast as possible.
Yeah, so yeah, when you say it's not over, there's a good reason why it might not be over. If we have something that looks like a bank run in terms of Bitcoin, and people start tossing around that term in the Western world, we'll get more panic and more FUD. It'll just be a circle of FUD. But again, over the long run, this will pass. A lot of the people here on this panel have been around for a while now, so they've seen a lot of things come and go. But we are filled with new people in this space. And I'm glad to say, I'm glad you didn't say that Jamie Dimon caused the panic. That was reassuring. Some people like to bring that up for some reason, or that somebody over there. Obviously, it was based on China. I think it is, you know, I think it's a complete overreaction, because people worship China in our space. I hope the China worship ends. I hope that's what we learn after all this. But something you brought up that's really important is that some people on this planet, they need Bitcoin right now. So that is a good segue into me saying, first of all, pound that like button, people. But the Tawanda Kembo, you're on the other side of the world. You're based in Zimbabwe. People always talk about how people need Bitcoin in Zimbabwe, and indeed, they need to get their wealth out of Zimbabwe. What are people saying in your circles about this price drop? And what is the Bitcoin situation in Zimbabwe? Give us an update.
So I'll start by saying, yeah, really, price doesn't matter. And when I say price doesn't matter, I don't mean we don't care about the price like we do. If someone holds Bitcoin, when the price goes up, it feels nice. It does. But just want to remind you, if you bought your Bitcoin 1 year ago, price was around $600. And so even if you sold your Bitcoin for $3,000 today, you still made a very huge profit. So I think that's also another reason why we saw the price drop significantly. So people who bought their Bitcoin around this time last year could afford to sell it at $3,000 and still make very big profit as they're panicking, like with the craziness that's going on in China. But Zimbabwe is an interesting place because just to give you guys some background, in 2009, I was in my final year in college in 2009. I worked in a bar and I realized that I've got enough money to buy 6 beers. So I buy a 6-pack and I carry the 6-pack to my table, which was the smart thing to do, because every time I would have gone to the counter to buy another beer after finishing one, the price would have gone up. So that's how crazy inflation was in Zimbabwe. And so it went so crazy, we just stopped using the Zimbabwean dollar entirely and we switched to the US dollar. So like any country, our government, like your countries and the viewers on the show, so your governments spend more money than they earn from taxes. And so they make up for the difference by printing money, which is why you've got inflation. In our case, we couldn't print money because we switched to the US dollar, so we can't print the US dollar. So what ended up happening was our government would just add zeros to their bank account when they needed to pay civil servants or pay for expenses. And so we ended up having a forex crisis in Zimbabwe, which went worse every year. It's now terrible. When I met Adam, when did you come to Zimbabwe? Was it early
November? It was in November.
Late last year. So like we stood in a bank queue with Adam in Zimbabwe, and it was still better then, because our banks would give you like a $50 maximum withdrawal per day, so you could withdraw up to $50 per day. It's now when I was traveling to Europe a few weeks ago, I went to my bank to say I'm going to be traveling, and guys, this is Standard Chartered Bank in Zimbabwe. So I went and said I'm going to be traveling to Europe. Can I get some cash? Because I've got money in my account. Can I get some cash which I can spend on my trip? And they said, we're not giving cash to individuals. We're only giving cash to companies. And the withdrawal limit is $20. And we've only got coins. And so if you're a company, you only get $20 in coins. Like, it's really crazy. So in a place like Zimbabwe, there's no other way to make international payments or cross-border payments. Bitcoin is the only way. And I know, because even the government can't. So I run a Bitcoin exchange in Zimbabwe. It's called Bitcoin FUD. And even the government can't make international payments. So we've had people from the government come to us and want to buy Bitcoin to make cross-border payments. And it's really that crazy. And so, so it's interesting to look at Bitcoin from like if you're in the US or in the UK or in the Western world, Bitcoin kind of makes sense as a good store of value, because the price will jump by $600 a day. So Bitcoin kind of makes sense as a good store of value. But in Zimbabwe, people are not really using it as a store of value. They are using it as a means to make international payments. And it makes sense to give an example if you're an importer. And so let's say you import cars and you sell them locally. You can make a foreign payment. You can make a foreign payment to import cars in the West. And even if you are buying Bitcoin at a very high price, which is like the case in Zimbabwe now. So in Zimbabwe, Bitcoin is on our exchange, it's like $4,600 right now. So like $1,000 higher than it is in the US. So you can afford to buy Bitcoin at a premium, because you can still pass on the cost to your customers locally. And so we see people valuing Bitcoin more as a utility, as a means to make payments. Like we get very few cases of people day trading or using it as a store of value, but it makes more sense to use as a utility, to buy Bitcoin just in time to make a cross-border payment or an international payment, because Visa, MasterCard doesn't really work here. Our banks don't have Forex.
This is amazing, people. You can't get cash in his country. I mean, from a bank. I mean, this is the situation. So while where everyone's here is panicking over price, and you shouldn't be panicking. I mean, look how this situation differs. They really need it there right now. And thank you for that update. That is, I love the on the ground perspective that you give. People, please, if you have questions, I paying attention to the super chat, pound that like button to spread the word. We've got a lot of live viewers. And of course, check out the notes section below. I have links to all of these guys, to all of their pertinent links, so you can check out who they are and everything. So let's go down to Paul. Paul,
wait, I have a question for Tawanda, if that's okay.
Oh yes, please. Before Paul, one the question, yes.
So I'm curious, when you say government officials, they buy Bitcoin to make international payments, is that like for personal matters, or is it for government matters that they do that? Like, is it for purchasing goods and services for the government, or for their own personal use?
Both, but both. So both, but they always can't get Bitcoin. I'll say, so we went live in September 2015. We're actually turning 2 years old this week. So, and our volume has doubled every 3 months. So every 3 months, our volume doubled. But the demand for Bitcoin is an order of magnitude higher than that. So we don't have enough Bitcoin liquidity in Zimbabwe. So we've had, so we now maintain a waiting list. So when sometimes we'll get like a company say, I want to buy so much Bitcoin, and because the exchange doesn't have enough liquidity, we'll say we may be able to do it via OTC. Just leave your details on our waiting list, and we send them a link to a Google form. So we have both individuals and companies that like besides Bitcoin, the only other way to make an international payment is to try to buy US dollars on the black market, put it in a duffel bag. And even now in 2017, companies are still doing it. Can you believe it? So
Wow.
you buy US dollars on the black market, you put it in a duffel bag, and then you drive across the border to make the payment in Zambia or Messina in South Africa, like, which is ridiculous. Like that's two last decade.
Do you have an estimate of how much every month, how many Bitcoins are bought to move money across borders in Zimbabwe? Because you said your volumes are, what is it, doubling every 3 months?
Yes. So right now our volume is 100K. But on our waiting list, we've got at least $1 million. So our waiting list is like almost always an order of magnitude. So people are waiting to buy Bitcoin today if we had someone selling Bitcoin. But also hard to get someone selling Bitcoin because the moment you sell Bitcoin, you can't get the money out of Zimbabwe. So we kind of have to grow the, like we've been growing the Bitcoin supply organically via remittances. We've got a very strong value proposition to people sending remittances, because now we say, because we've got people willing to buy Bitcoin at a premium, we can now get people to send remittances and get negative transfer fees. So imagine sending $100 to Zimbabwe and $130 getting to Zimbabwe, or $140 getting to Zimbabwe. Wow. Which is why. So when we get people who come to sell Bitcoin, and all of them are sending remittances to Zimbabwe, like those people become customers, like for like they stick, like they don't stop using us, because it will cost them at least 10% when they use Western Union. When it comes to us, it costs them minus 30%, and so those customers tend to stick. But the user experience of using an exchange for a normal person is not that easy. So it hasn't been really easy to grow that demographic, and there's more we need to do to improve that user experience for someone sending remittances. But we'll get there.
All right. This is awesome stuff. Awesome insight on the ground. I love it. And I've been to Zimbabwe, and yeah, I've been in a bank line, and I've seen men just standing there all day waiting to get their $50. I mean, it's quite a sight to see. Paul, a lot has been said. You have not said anything yet, and everyone wants to know what you have to say. And so I guess tell us your thoughts on all this, but also tell us what you are up to so people know who you are and everything.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, my name is Paul Capistani. I've been in Bitcoin since 2013, and I know Adam from back in Baltimore, Charm City. So I made the move out to San Francisco, worked at a few startups, ran or co-organized the San Francisco Bitcoin developer meetup out there for a bit. And yeah, I recently quit my day job in order to go work on Lightning Network stuff. So happy to be on the show. And actually, Tawanda, do you recognize this?
Yeah.
Yeah, $100 trillion bill. These are real, right? They were a real thing.
Yes, they were. I'll also add that if you want another one, I'm going to be coming to the Texas Bitcoin conference at the end of October. I'm going to carry a bunch of those just to give away. So I'll save one for you if you are going to be there.
Yeah, crazy. Actually, well, I have a question for Tawanda, if that's okay, Adam.
That's awesome. Please.
Yeah. So with my interest in the Lightning Network, I'm planning on starting a startup in that area. Tawanda, how much do you know about Lightning Network? Do you think it'll help facilitate actual use cases in Zimbabwe, or?
Yes. I think it could help a lot, because people have money in bank accounts they can't use. We don't have enough point of sale terminals. You know, those point of sale terminals, we don't have enough in the country because we actually import them. We can't manufacture them locally, and our banks don't have forex to import them. So there is a huge shortage. People use mobile money and stuff. And I get how Lightning Network works, but I think if you can build a product which abstracts that, like the complexities of the Lightning Network, and provides an easy-to-use user interface, like that could get a lot of adoption, not just amongst not just amongst like B2C transactions, but businesses to businesses and businesses to banks. Let me give you an example. I first used the internet in 1999. And I remember trying to explain to my grandmother what the internet was. And she didn't get me, she didn't understand it. She said to me, Tawanda, I'll never use the internet in my lifetime. Those are the words she used. And then she joined WhatsApp 2 years ago. And I remember trying to explain to her that now she's on WhatsApp, she's now using the internet. And she didn't believe me. She told me, Tawanda, I'm not on the internet. I'm just using WhatsApp. And I think if you can abstract the Lightning Network, like what WhatsApp did to the internet, and provide it as a real solution, it could work. I'll also add that right now we are mostly using debit cards in mobile money, which is expensive. So mobile money is like a 2% fee for every transaction, and then debit cards will charge like $3 per transaction, like, which is high. To give an example, so, the last time I was in the US, I opened a bank account, and I would use a debit card to pay merchants when you're buying a beer or you're paying at a restaurant, and it was 0 transaction fees. In Zimbabwe, well, that's because the merchant pays the transaction fees. In Zimbabwe, it's the other way around. So you pay something between 50 cents and $3 every time you use your debit card. So every time you go to the counter to buy another beer, you get charged as well, and the merchant gets charged as well. So, so like we don't really have a payment system which really works. Like, and we're just coming from a cash-based society. So this debit card thing is new to a lot of people, and so a lot of people are paying a lot of money in fees. Like there's a lot of resistance. So that's why, Adam, you'd see a lot of queues for people wanting to get cash to buy stuff such as groceries and stuff, because people would pay like a few dollars every time they swipe their card, which is a lot. Which is a lot, especially if you're poor. So if you're rich, you can like buy stuff in bulk once at the end of the month or the beginning of the month, the stuff you need. If you're poor, it's really expensive to be poor.
Yeah. All right, this is unfortunate, definitely. Paul, continue with your what you were saying.
That was very super interesting to hear about, Tawanda. Thanks. Yeah, hopefully, I mean, I literally decided to quit my day job because I think Lightning Network will be such a big deal. I also think that this is sort of prior, just about the Netscape moment, potentially, like early or late 1990s, perhaps. And if Lightning Network turns out being as cool as I think it will be usable by everyone from a grandmother to whoever, hopefully. So yeah, that's very cool to hear. And Adam, you had asked about what I think about the price stuff and the China FUD. Man, I was, I don't know if you guys were around in 2013, but I had already gone all in 2013, like basically 99.9% of my net worth was in Bitcoin. And riding that bubble, like from $100 to $1,200, and then constant rumors of, oh, China might be banning Bitcoin. Oh, China might be banning Bitcoin. That was super painful to see it go from 1,200 all the way down to something like 200-ish, I think. And so I've been there, done that. And I have to confess, I did sell some Bitcoin at 3,900 bucks just because I needed the capital for my startup. And then I bought back in at 3,200. So it's been fine. I literally never buy and trade Bitcoin. I have been a holder for 4 years, I guess, 3 years. And but yeah, I didn't want to ride out another 3-year bear market, basically, where the price crashes. But I don't know. I mean, it looks like we dipped under 3,000 bucks for a tiny bit and then shot right back up. So I am back all in on Bitcoin, baby.
All right, good. And yeah, we've all of us have been around since 2013. Everybody on this panel, we got a real veteran panel here, man. Tuur, any thoughts on anything that was just said, or do you want to talk about Lightning Network and SegWit, since that was brought up? And I know you have thoughts on SegWit and also thoughts on, I guess, the competitor, Bcash, and amounts of transactions being done on all. So take it away.
That's a lot. So
that is a lot.
Let me think. So, I mean, I am excited about SegWit because it fixes malleability and it really opens the door for a lot of possibilities. And I've been trying to gauge, really from developers and wallet makers and companies in the Bitcoin space, how soon they think that we'll have consumer-facing Lightning applications that will, provide a smooth experience and all that stuff. And what I've gathered is the consensus seems to be that 12 to 18 months could be realistic to really see something, working. Obviously, that doesn't mean that it will be in that time frame, but the fact that we have a few working prototypes out there, I think is a good thing. And to me, it's big because it really is like a new Bitcoin, right? If you have, if you can use Bitcoin for very small micro payments, then you have all of a sudden machine-to-machine payments that are possible. The whole Balaji 21 idea can kind of come to life more. And now with these crackdowns on exchanges, I think there could be some interesting applications where you see decentralized exchanges pop up. I think this whole crackdown is a blessing in disguise, because it's kind of like, when what was it again? Before BitTorrent, there were a couple of semi-decentralized file exchange platforms, and they were not totally decentralized, so they got shut down, and people like Metallica sued those people, and then BitTorrent came up and was indestructible. So I'm really excited to see what the response is going to be, and I know that several developers are working on increased fungibility, increased decentralization, but maybe now in an environment like this where there's more regulatory pressure, there might be more demand and more money, literally, like more money for projects like this to really make a dent and continue making Bitcoin more decentralized. That I think is really exciting. And I just love the diversity of what's going on in terms of development. Like, there's people working on all kinds of forms of improving Bitcoin's fungibility, Lightning, and then I guess interoperability even between those solutions. And the community is bigger than ever in terms of how much development there's going on. That's just regardless of the price, it's just been steadily growing.
Yeah,
that's kind of my thoughts about Bitcoin.
Yeah. You bring up logical, sound fundamentals, and it just seems like most people don't even know about those things or don't really care about those things. That it's the day trader reactionaries that are getting the press, influencing the market. But in the bottom line is that eventually the soundness, the greatness of Bitcoin will be known by all, and it will be very useful. It will have its Netscape moment. Tawanda's grandmother will be using it very soon. So I want to jump back to Paul real quick, because we haven't heard that much from him. There's a guy out there who sent in the super chat, and pound that like button, people. Thank you very much. We've really got a lot of live viewers. We're having a blast. But a person in the super chat, Michael, said this comment, and he says, if they, and they is in quotes, have noted the effect of closing China exchanges, won't they be choosing a moment to close U.S. exchanges? Now, first of all, I don't know if that's implying that there's some master manipulators behind the scenes. I don't believe in, a few rich people control the whole world. I don't know if that's implying that or whatever, as I definitely don't believe in conspiracies of that nature. But, and I'm not saying he's saying there's a conspiracy. But what is interesting, though, are we going to have some problems with U.S. exchanges? Is this a trend? Because I personally you know, until this China thing happened, I think all these countries are starting to open up to Bitcoin. When you hear about China closing exchanges, you think about, well, that's not really being open to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. That's kind of putting a damper on it. Although I think it's good in the long run. But Paul, do you foresee exchanges being shut down in the United States, or I mean, what do you think about that statement?
Yeah, I think it would take something pretty crazy to cause exchanges in the US to get shut down in any form, even temporarily. I mean, who knows, though? There could be FUD about North Korea using Bitcoin to get around economic sanctions, right? And if it turns out that the powers that be take us to war with North Korea, who knows? Maybe that could become a big thing, right? That causes Bitcoin to be looked down upon in the US. But I highly doubt it. It's a possibility. I think it'd be a remote one. In terms of the Chinese exchanges being potentially closed, I mean, it's unclear to me whether it's a temporary closing. Obviously, they're all closing. It seems like most of them are told to close by the end of September. But from the rumors I was reading, it seems like that may not be a permanent thing. So who knows? But regardless, what I've told people who ask me about, does it matter that China is banning Bitcoin, considering there's such a huge potential market for Bitcoin? What I tell them is there's stuff like localbitcoins.com. There's stuff like Abra, which is basically Uber for Bitcoin. There's these person-to-person, like in real life, ways to exchange fiat dollars or fiat yuan in China's case for Bitcoin. And that's really hard to police. So for people who really want to get around these sort of arbitrary restrictions, they can find a way. China has the Great Firewall of China, which, yes, is used to censor a lot of information for their population. But guess what? People find out how to use VPNs and get around the Great Firewall of China. So I think short term, sure, it may stop some people in China from getting into Bitcoin, but long term, people who really want to find a way around it will be easily able to do that. And also, Tuur was talking about the potential for more decentralized ways of running exchanges. There's something called BitSquare, which I personally haven't used, but is apparently a fully decentralized exchange. And then, of course, with Lightning Network, we're going to be able to do cross-chain atomic swaps, which will facilitate pretty decentralized, trustless exchanges across different chains, basically. And so that is definitely not working today. It's a future thing, but that will be yet another way to avoid the potential regulatory issues in certain jurisdictions, I think.
Using the term regulatory issues, I start to think about ICOs and Ethereum. You were on the ground in San Francisco for quite some time, and you know a lot of people out there, I'm sure, and you know the madness that is now circulating around ICOs. Everybody wants to do an ICO. There's a certain people like Ethereum. People are really big on Ethereum. I said in the title of this show that we talk about Ethereum. So give me, Paul, since you're talking now, give me your thoughts on what do you think about Ethereum? What do you think about how they might have a hard fork soon? And now that they're how about this? Well, no, we'll get into the airdrop later, but I don't want to put too much on your plate.
Sure. So having helped run the San Francisco Bitcoin Developers Meetup, that was sort of the place where hardcore crypto developers went and gave talks about what they're working on. For example, Greg Maxwell gave a talk about the latest release of Bitcoin Core 0.15 just a few weeks ago. And we would get pitched constantly from people who wanted to talk about their new altcoin, right? And most of them were obvious scams. And so it was pretty easy to say, no, we're not going to give you the stage at all. But yeah, there's a huge signal to noise issue with this whole ICO space, because hell, I'm a developer myself. I understand how Bitcoin works, but there's no way for me to figure out which of these altcoins or ICOs might be better than Bitcoin unless I were to fully read the white paper, look at all the code, and then try to figure out if it can outcompete Bitcoin. And I can guarantee you that all the people buying into ICOs, the majority of the people buying into ICOs do not do any of the things that I talked about. Reading the white paper, reading the code, running the code, checking for vulnerabilities, trying to figure out how things might play out in the future. So it's just hype. It's just all hype. And the ICO stuff, Ethereum, the fact that it's Turing complete, there's a reason Bitcoin is not Turing complete, because it opens up a whole new type, a whole new, basically, attack surface for the coin. So yeah, I never had any interest in Ethereum, have had negative interest in ICOs, and basically I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, I guess you could say.
All right, well, let's get now. Tuur Demeester is not a Bitcoin maximalist per se, but he's had some thoughts on Ethereum, and I want him to follow up to what you said, and also Tuur, give us your thoughts on what happened with IOTA, with the controversy that's surrounding that. Inform everyone. So there's a lot on your plate again. Sorry.
It's all right. It was funny to hear Paul say that he has a negative interest in ICOs. I haven't heard it put that way. Like an active disinterest. So I guess I had a few thoughts about what you said earlier about the exchanges. Just like the word out there is that there are some exchanges in the US that are really considered to be not investable anymore, where people assume they have a big regulatory target on their back, and they could really get shut down. And the reason would be that they would be facilitating the trade of unlicensed securities. Basically, that if you can't just conjure up securities, or you can't just have a trading platform for them. That is pretty tightly regulated in the US, unless, of course, you jump through all the right hoops. And so I don't think that we would see like all the exchanges shut down, but I think there could be a shakeout still coming for some of these exchanges, where it's kind of like, maybe it's just a fine, quote unquote, just a fine. But then it's like, if they're uninvestable, where's that money going to come from? What if people start pulling their money out because they're afraid? So I see that as like, I guess I have in the past 6 months, like that was kind of one of the things that I thought, like, if there is a big shakeout in the crypto space, it really could be the exchanges. Again, like we said, like long term, I don't think that's a problem at all, really. And also, if anything, it establishes Bitcoin as more conservative, more decentralized, more liquid. I mean, the fact that even without exchanges, there's so many ways to buy and sell Bitcoin still, and that's not really true for a lot of these ICO tokens, right? They are only traded on very few platforms. So when it comes to Ethereum, yeah, I still have those same concerns that Paul voiced as well, is that, being Turing complete is basically gives you a huge attack surface. The way Ethereum is I worry a lot about whether Ethereum is scalable at all. Like, it seems like the Raiden, which is kind of the Lightning cousin for Ethereum, is like the payment channel technology for Ethereum. That seems to be the most promising avenue to try and scale things, but then that seems to only go for real for actual transactions, simple transactions, not so much the smart contract stuff. And so, one of the worries is that Ethereum could really kind of fail as a result of its own success. Because what if we imagine that one of those apps, one of those dApps, right, decentralized apps, gets successful, like Augur, for example, and thousands of people use Augur to place bets, right, to make betting contracts. And then what would happen, I think, unless, of course, some magical scaling solution comes around, is that on the day of the Super Bowl, when everybody wants to bet on the outcome, there's like a brownout, right? The network is down all day, and you can't even send a simple payment. Or on whatever else, the presidential election or any other major event, the network would be down. So I think that's a huge problem if you want to grow up as a payment network, or even as a store of value. Like what value is there really there if your tokens are not liquid really? And so I think this move, which has been actually anticipated by quite a few people, that all of a sudden Russia is friendly to Ether, and the Moscow Stock Exchange is going to list securities and integrating with Waves, and Putin is meeting with Vitalik. It's kind of like, I mean, the cynical way to look at it is like, oh, well, it's kind of a convenient safe haven for a lot of these ICO developers. If they can get protection, and at the same time the Putin regime gets some benefits because they can basically use it as it's a clunky way, but at least it's some way to have their own securities platform where they can, instead of having to pump the Winter Olympics and like use that to give $10 billion to their buddies, maybe their buddies can now launch ICOs and get money that way from the government. So I think if anything, that limits the upside, right? It may mean that Ethereum has a longer lifespan. If obviously there's a big if, right? If it's true what I'm saying, that Ethereum might not be scalable, one way to kind of cheat is to say, all right, well, we don't care about being decentralized anymore. We'll have 5 nodes, and we have Putin's blessing, so we'll just run them in Moscow data centers, and that's fine. But I think doing that would really limit Ethereum's upside. I did a little research, and I think that the money supply of the Russian ruble is about $200 billion. So I think that would be fair, right, to say that the very maximum upside in this kind of centralized scenario would probably be about $200 billion, where Ether becomes the currency of Russia, right, the national centralized currency of Russia. So that's why, like, for all these reasons, I'm not really right now. I don't know where the price could go. Like, I mean, because that is in a way a bullish scenario. It means like it's a 10x from here. But of course, it would be very different from what Bitcoin is setting itself up to be, which I think is decentralized, universal, censorship-resistant store of value.
Wow, that you did put a lot on the table there. That Russia theory, that's very interesting. Very interesting. We'll see how that plays out. I mean, the people out in the day trading space, or out in the space that doesn't care about centralization or inflation, they probably think it's awesome if Ethereum became the Russian official cryptocurrency and became more centralized. I want to go back to Tawanda because we haven't heard from Tawanda. A lot has been said. Do you have any thoughts on Ethereum, altcoins, anything that's been said in the last 10 minutes, because we haven't heard from you for a while?
Yeah, great. So my opinions are going to be very different from everyone else, because I'm from Africa, where we have real money problems right now, and so we can say Ethereum is Turing complete, so it increases the attack vector for hackers and stuff. But that's a problem in the future. And we can say Ethereum is like, what if it fails? What if it grows too fast? What if Olga is too successful? That's firstly a problem in the future, and really a first world problem. It's not a problem right now. So in places like Africa right now, we have like real liquidity problems. So too many people want to buy cryptocurrency. There's not enough liquidity, not just in Zimbabwe, on the continent. When you go to places such as, and it's true, Zimbabwe has its problems. Like we've got forex challenges and stuff. So you go to places such as Nigeria, Tanzania, and these are the 2 of Africa's biggest markets. People cannot, so people have not just forex challenges, and forex is another problem, but capital controls. So if you're a company, the most you can send outside the country is like $10,000. Like in Visa, MasterCard doesn't work most of the time. When you go to places such as Angola, in Angola, the price of cryptocurrency is like double what it is in the US. which is so Africa generally has a lot of money problems, and we have problems right now, and so people don't. And I think a lot of these liquidity problems. So the reason why cryptocurrencies double the price in Angola is there's not enough liquidity, and one way to solve this is if we have more ICOs, so more people building local currencies to address, like not just local currencies that are scams, but local currencies that address local problems that can be traded for Bitcoin that increase liquidity on the continent, and so people will be able to do stuff such as cross-border payments, international payments, etc., etc.
So you see ICOs.
Sorry,
I was going to say, do you see ICOs as a way to increase liquidity in Africa? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, I do. I see, like, increased liquidity, solve problems. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you were about to say something. I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
I actually lost my train of thought, but yeah, increase liquidity, solve local problems.
All right.
Increase cryptocurrency supply.
So yeah, but so can you say something about how are you talking about creating local cryptocurrencies? How does that help? Can you say a bit more about that? Creating a new currency, like how is that going to be liquid if you create it in Harare or something, and then who is going to want to buy it in another place?
So let me give an example. In Zimbabwe, so we do in Zimbabwe. Traditionally, we've always done $5.3 billion worth of imports every year. In 2017, today, our banks can only do a few hundred millions. I think it's like 600 million, like the total they are going to be able to do this year. So our banks don't know how to do the other 4.3 billion this year. And like cryptocurrency can only do like 100,000. Like that's our volume. Our monthly volume is like 100. So maybe cryptocurrency can only do like maybe this year another million. So our banks don't know how to move $3.3 billion across the border to settle a payment in some other country.
Can I jump in real quick, Tawanda? If you're talking about transaction throughput, is that what you're talking about? Like the amounts of money that can flow around?
Yeah, liquidity.
Okay. Well, I mean, why do you need ICOs for that? Especially with stuff like Lightning Network that will be coming online very soon.
So for Lightning Network to work is if I open a channel with you and you are in a country outside Zimbabwe, I need to have that Bitcoin to open that channel on the Lightning Network. So I can't make $100 worth of Bitcoin if I don't have the Bitcoin. And that's the problem we have in Zimbabwe. We don't have enough liquidity on our exchanges. We've only got one exchange in Zimbabwe. We don't have enough liquidity on that exchange to help everyone who wants to buy Bitcoin.
Okay, I'm not sure how ICOs help with that.
Yeah, keep talking about the ICO. Keep talking about what you're talking. Yeah.
So here's how ICOs can help. So if I were to start a cryptocurrency to solve this problem specifically, and I raise, maybe I create 10 tokens and I sell maybe 2 tokens for $2 million worth of Bitcoin or Ethereum. It now means I've got $2 million inside Zimbabwe, so that would help. But it also means this cryptocurrency is worth 2 times $5 million. So that's the market cap, and it's liquid. So this cryptocurrency improves the liquidity situation in Zimbabwe, because you can now, instead of just moving Bitcoin, you can now move this other currency, which is also, you probably have a bigger volume you can move from Zimbabwe because it was created in Zimbabwe. And so when we get more people doing that to address local challenges, we get more money people can move inside and out of the country in this currency. Does that make sense?
I'm not totally clear on it still, but to be honest, and also altcoins could be used for that as well, right? Why do you need an ICO? I mean, I'm a ICO anti-ICO maximalist, I guess you could say, because really the one use case they seem to have is raising a bunch of money, and that's about it. In terms of actual products and actual usage of the tokens that are supposedly going to provide some sort of utility, I haven't seen anything that really accomplishes that. But then again, I don't really care and don't really follow the ICO space because it doesn't make any sense to me. But in terms of just increasing liquidity, increasing transaction throughput, I still don't see why you would need ICOs. Altcoins could theoretically do that, Litecoin, for example, if you really want to. And maybe I have a bias, but I think Lightning Network will help a lot as well with just transaction throughput. So I don't know.
I think I might understand something about. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I just shared a link in the chat section, which is a blog post I wrote last year entitled "Why the Price of Bitcoin in Africa is Significantly Higher Than Other International Exchanges," and I sort of ran into the reasons which address your concerns. So you can also read it to get more detail. But let me just run through the main points. So first of all is liquidity. And we have tried it. So we started off as a Bitcoin exchange. We added Dash and Litecoin, and then Bitcoin Cash after the hard fork. But if we don't have enough people selling that Litecoin on a local exchange, or enough people selling Dash, or enough people selling Bitcoin Cash, we still have a liquidity problem for people who want to buy this currency. So you can visit the exchange, and there's just not enough currency to buy. And we know this because we get a lot of people who come to our office and say, I want to buy a car with $10,000. And we have to turn this person away and say, we don't have $10,000 on our exchange right now. The best you can do is to add you to our waiting list, and then we'll get back to you as soon as we have someone selling $10,000 worth of Bitcoin, or Litecoin, or Dash. So liquidity is a real problem. And even if we add more currencies, so when you go to Bitcoin Fundi, our exchange right now, you'll see like the Bitcoin volume is high. Dash and Litecoin volume is a little bit lower. Bitcoin Cash volume is way lower because we don't have enough liquidity this side. So the second point I put is demand exceeds supply. So which basically, so we have more people who want to buy cryptocurrency. We don't have enough people selling cryptocurrency. The third reason I put is that cryptocurrency is better than the money we're using now. So the money we're using now is great. You can use it to make a payment at a point of sale terminal in a shop and stuff. But cryptocurrency is like that money on steroids. It's way better because now you can use it to transcend the limitations of the money we have now. You can use it to make a cross-border payment, an online payment. You can send money to Japan. And the fourth reason why cryptocurrencies are hard to get, why we have this liquidity problem, is all the Bitcoin. So all the Bitcoin being sold in Africa right now, and this is all over Africa, all that Bitcoin was bought on an exchange outside Africa. So when Bitcoin started in 2009, it was really started by people outside Africa. The first people to mine Bitcoin were outside Africa. The very first people to use Bitcoin in Africa were people like me. I remember when I wrote my first blog post on Bitcoin, I had trouble getting it published on a Bitcoin on a tech blog. Because I had to first explain what Bitcoin was, etc., etc. So first people who use Bitcoin are people like me, and people like me couldn't even buy Bitcoin on a foreign exchange because of limitations. One of the reasons we started our exchange was we couldn't get an exchange to open in Zimbabwe. So in 2004, I basically wrote an email to every exchange on the planet and said, you guys should start an exchange in Zimbabwe. We have currency problems. A Bitcoin exchange could help. And all of them turned me down. So all of them, from Coinbase to CEX.io like all the exchanges were not willing to start an exchange in this part of the world. And so all the Bitcoin we have in Africa right now was first bought on an exchange outside Africa. And so you get people selling it in Africa at a premium. We don't really have people mining Bitcoin here because the cost of electricity is very high in this part of the world. So we really have a liquidity problem in Africa. And I think one of the ways we can solve it, well, there are a few ways I suggest in the blog post I shared as well. So one is getting more people to get into mining. And of course, like, it does help, although it's not as profitable as it is to visit other places in the world. Another is to get more people to send remittances in cryptocurrency. Like another way is to get exporters to opt getting paid in cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin. Another way is to get foreign direct investment coming in Bitcoin. And we've done it. So the last two investors who made an investment in Bitcoin Fundi, like we got them to make that investment in Bitcoin. But the fifth and most important one is to get more people creating local currencies, local cryptocurrencies, which are tradable for Bitcoin, which increase the cryptocurrency supply on the continent. And I think that's why ICOs would have a real use case in Africa.
All right, Tuur, Tuur, you wanted to say something about that. I know you had something to say. You still have something to say about Tawanda's original comments? You're muted still.
This should be better, right?
Yeah. So
yeah, I was just thinking about the need or the appeal of tokens in an economy where liquidity is a real problem. And I was reminded of a story that I heard back in 2013 of this is an early Bitcoin adopter who was from Iceland, and his grandfather had a building company. This is probably way back in probably the 30s or 40s in Iceland, where they had a bout of hyperinflation. And so what this entrepreneur did was he didn't have money, so he would pay his employees in cement certificate. It would be basically a token on paper that they could redeem for cement, because he did have cement available. And so one day, a government official contacted him. It's like, hey, Mr. Walfels, are you emitting these tokens to your workers, these cement tokens? And he was like, yeah, I do. And the government official said, well, I'm asking because this guy wants to pay his taxes with it. And then this entrepreneur is like, okay. And then it turns out the government did accept the token as a tax, as a way to pay taxes, because the local money was so horrible. And so I guess what I'm saying, if in Zimbabwe as well, if liquidity is a huge problem, I can see people get creative by trying to issue tokens in a digital way. And so maybe ICOs are a way to do that in a way that's more auditable and transparent. So in a way, you would not be creating a Bitcoin alternative necessary, but more like a debt token, right? Or maybe you can issue shares in your company. Or I don't know, Tawanda, can you comment? Like, is this something that is in the direction of what you're talking about?
Absolutely, that's exactly what I was trying to say. You just said it better than I did. That, but that's exactly what you took those words out of my mouth.
Awesome. I'm glad. So it makes sense. I mean, your logic makes sense there. I mean, when people hear the term ICO, yeah, I mean, there's other ways of creating the coins also. I mean, when people hear the ICO aspect of it, they immediately think, well, the person who's going to create this is trying just to make a profit and dump and leave. But we're going to see how this develops on the continent of Africa. I mean, I predicted there will be ICOs springing up in Africa, and it looks like there's a need for it. Hopefully, it won't be. There's going to be some bad ones too. I mean, obviously, when you hear about, are you going to want to buy an ICO that originates out of Nigeria? I mean, there's just a certain stigma about things that come out of Nigeria is notorious for financial scams. So how about if someone legitimate wants to really do what you're saying there, they're going to have a hard time. but there'll still be people buying it, I'm sure. I mean, there's an intrigue about Africa in the West also that will help, you know, bring money to the continent if there is some sort of entrepreneur who does an ICO or who does a friendly fork or whatever, a crypto dividend of Bitcoin or something like that. I want to move on a little bit as we're getting here. We've been having a lot of fun here. Tuur, real quick, you talked about IOTA this week a little bit. Do you have anything more to say about that controversy?
Well, yeah, but first, these African ICOs, like if, for example, like how do I invest in real estate in a distressed economy? How do I do that today? I have to travel down there. I have to like meet with people and buy one individual lot. Like if there is a legit company that has, you know, some like decent backing and I can do my due diligence. And if they, you know, obviously I'm talking about tokens on a chain that is maybe a bit more stable than Ethereum. But if they, you know, put those tokens and make them tradable, maybe I can just invest $5,000 in this, you know, Zimbabwean real estate ICO that's legit. I'm talking maybe 10 years down the road, but this is something that I would be excited about, where, you know, have like basically where you cross these bureaucratic barriers and make economies that are very isolated, make them investable.
And let me throw a spanner there before you answer Adam's question. Sorry about that, Adam. But a lot of the ICOs we're seeing now, ICOs are likened to vitamins. So they make something better, faster, like a better way to store stuff, a better way to do your identity and stuff. The first ICOs you're going to see coming out of Africa are going to be painkillers, not vitamins. So they are going to solve painful, difficult problem such as real estate. So you've got money, you want to buy land in Africa. How do you go about it? Like how are you are not like buying land from like from a con artist or stuff like that. Like we've heard stories where someone will buy land and build a house, and then like when they fly to Africa, they see like all the pictures where they were being sent with pictures of the place next door. And so a lot of the ICOs you are going to see coming out of Africa, first of all, like they are going to be painkillers, solving a very painful problem. And not vitamins, not ICOs trying to build something which is faster, better, cheaper, easier, like we're seeing these days. But sorry to throw a spanner, you can go ahead and answer Adam's questions.
Well, no, Paul, you were about to say something too, I thought.
Again, I mean, ICOs, in my opinion, are not some magical silver bullet to things. I mean, Ethereum is not a magical silver bullet to anything, really. The whole point behind Ethereum was that smart contracts can be smarter, I guess. Bitcoin has a scripting language built into it. I don't know if people are not aware of this, I guess. The Ethereum guys must have had some really good marketing, because people think smart contracts can only be done on Ethereum, but no, they can also be done on Bitcoin. The problem with smart contracts is if you're trying to tie any external real-world event to a smart contract, it's basically impossible currently. You need something called oracles, which is still not really figured out yet. And there's potential for prediction markets to feed into that, and it's a whole rabbit hole you can go down, but it's not figured out yet. And Ethereum definitely hasn't figured out how do you get a real world, if something happens in the real world, how do you get that to then affect the smart contract, right? So if everything is built on that and that hasn't been figured out, I don't understand why anyone cares about ICOs, period. But that's just me. I don't know.
Okay. No, that's not. We have different various opinions on ICOs here. I like it. I like it a lot. All right. So yeah, we are getting toward the end. I'll go to Tuur. Any thoughts? Anything we left out? I know I keep on bringing IOTA up to you. I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to like agree with Paul. Like I think maybe the way people are looking at smart contracts, and especially you're right. I mean, solving that Oracle problem is huge. is maybe the way people were excited about video streaming in 1999, and then it took 10 years for it to actually be, you know, workable and real. So maybe it's going to be another 10 years to have, like, you know, legit multi-billion-dollar, sustainable, decent token offerings, things like that. And then when it comes to IOTA, I don't have strong opinions. I just started like a thread kind of aggregating some skeptical voices that are basically arguing that, you know, it's not decentralized, it is actually decentralized today, that this Tangle idea is maybe, you know, kind of like more of a brain fart than something that is a breakthrough. And I see that with a lot of these projects, is that, you know, in a way, it's like, you know, these cryptographers, I kind of see them as these theoretical physicists, where they're like, you know, they're like trying to figure out maybe like post-Newtonian physics. And then there's this 25-year-old who comes like from nowhere, who's totally not connected to this community that are trying to solve these really hard problems. And he's saying he came up with this total breakthrough, or he's promising to, it's actually, you know, even worse. Like he's saying, I'm going to produce this breakthrough, give me money now. So, you know, I think that's like, that should elicit some frowns and some raised eyebrows. And so that's kind of how I felt about IOTA. It's like, well, it's a very big claim to make. And then so far from the, you know, established theoretical physicists, so to speak, I'm not seeing a lot of excitement. That's just, you know, where I am. I don't know much about many details.
Yeah, it's just strange how, you know, they did find a problem with it, and people tried to point out the problem very nicely, and it seemed like it's turned into this drama. I mean, the people have gotten very defensive behind it, and then it seems to be a negative feedback loop for that coin. Now, more and more people are looking into it and are kind of bringing it bad attention, and kind of do the comparison that, you know, who are these guys? Who are they to say how great they are when they're, you know, having these problems? So I found this situation to be fascinating, because Bitcoin is the tested rock that is out there, and everybody wants their altcoin to be the next big thing. And we're seeing, and we're probably going to see more and more of this, people finding flaws in these altcoins. And one day, one of these flaws is going to turn into a really bad problem, where people are going to, because the problem with IOTA was fixed before anyone could get hurt. But I have a feeling that there's going to be another altcoin one day that's going to get hacked, or who knows what's going to happen. And it's just going to be disastrous, and everyone will see how truly tested Bitcoin is. So that's why I brought that.
And then, so yeah, so far there's not a lot of upside to pointing out flaws, right? I mean, there's not a lot of liquidity. There's like a lot of like hot money. And so like if the market is more mature, you can have firms that are like, you know, one of them is Muddy Waters in the traditional world. They focused on China, and they would basically analyze these publicly traded companies. And then if they found fraud, they would, you know, get a short position in the company and then publish their report, and then in a way make it sustainable for them to specialize in this kind of criticism. But today, what is really the upside if you're going to point out that IOTA doesn't work? Like, you can't make any money off of it, really. People are upset with you. They might attack you. And then you're wasting time on and then also intellectually, it might not be very stimulating, because often these ideas are like rehashes of things that you can find in the Bitcoin Talk archives of 2012. Like somebody, you know, already brought it up, and now it's just kind of like the turd is polished, and they made a white paper around it.
Wow, that is hilarious, that last line. They're rehashing something from 2012, but it's true. It's true.
Yeah. Did you guys see the tweet from Matthew Green, the cryptographer over at Johns Hopkins? He said, "You guys designed a suspension bridge out of cheese, and when other bridge makers pointed this out to you, you pretend you're the victim." That's basically the level of stuff that's going on with stuff like IOTA. So
yeah, I actually read that on air. That's great. You found that. We're on the same. It's coming out of Hopkins, so maybe that's why we were both attracted to it, since we got the ball. You know, Paul is like the one guy in cryptocurrency that knew me for cryptocurrency. I just want to point it. He can like, we don't have time. He could tell stories of where, you know, he's seen me partying it like a rock star before in real life, but we don't have time for that. But so let's get into conclusionary thoughts here, because I don't party anymore. Conclusionary thoughts, Tawanda, what do you have to say? Anything that was left off, anything you want to add?
No, I was just thinking, Paul said something interesting about how ICOs don't really work right now, and he gives the example of how like you want to tie something to a real world event and you need an oracle, like, which is really true. So so a bunch of these companies raising lots of money in an ICO are still very early stage, and when you compare that to a traditional startup that's raising that's venture capital funded, so in their seed round they will do maybe a few tens or a few hundreds of thousands in a seed round, and then do a little bit more in Series A. And then you get a lot of companies that are doing like Series D before they've like figured out all these problems. They are trying to tie real-world events to before we've even got oracles that work. Like that's kind of so I won't like I won't really give a conclusion, but I'll just say like that's an interesting way of looking at it, that we have a lot of companies raising a bunch of money before they are at the stage where they are ready to raise a bunch of money, and raising too much money, and you guys know this already, raising too much money is probably just as bad as raising too little money, like, because all of a sudden you now have more responsibility, you lose negotiating power because everyone knows you've got money. They tend to charge you more. You are under a lot of pressure to give results. You are thinking about diversification too early instead of focusing on one problem. In etc, like you can, like we can keep listing these reasons until the cows come home. But yeah, Paul like gave an interesting way of looking at ICOs, especially right now, where companies are still very early stage and raising too much money.
All right. Paul, the floor is yours.
I think I've said what I had to say. Thanks for having me on the show, Adam. It was good talking to you after it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while. Oh, good times. Tuur Demeester, we'll let you wrap everything up. It's been a really awesome show. Everyone, please pound that like button if you enjoyed it, so people find out about it. Check out the link section below and bang the bell button if you're already a subscriber so you get notifications. Tuur, do you have anything to add? Any stories? Anything?
I mean, I guess maybe two things briefly. One is I would recommend people check out the WizSec presentation from Breaking Bitcoin. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. Basically, you know, this analyst who lives in it's not Hong Kong, it's Tokyo, who's done this analysis of what happened with Mt. Gox. I think it's extremely interesting. And one of the highlights for me was that aside from, sorry, I'm just losing the screen here. Aside from that infamous hack of 600,000 Bitcoins, there were at least, because for brevity, he just left out a bunch of incidents, but he highlighted 7 totally separate incidents where security of Mt. Gox was compromised, and where in total between 50 and 100,000 Bitcoins were lost. And then just, you know, that made me start asking around at Breaking Bitcoin, like, hey, have you interacted with some of the existing Bitcoin exchanges? What do you think? And there are concerns that, you know, security is not as good as we all hope that it is. And so I really do think that we will have we're not out of the woods. We are still going to have big Bitcoin hacks or Bitcoin exchange hacks. because I think to some extent it's still amateur hour when it comes to security. Of course, you know, Mark Karpellis really set the bar, let's say, very, very low. But that doesn't mean that anybody who's like a little better than Mark is out of the woods. So that would be like, you know, try to be safe, keep up with what's, you know, the latest news about hardware wallets and how to store your own Bitcoins. Really try to just, you know, do your research, because every day people get hacked. And of course, not just, you know, exchanges, also individuals, they go after you on social media. It's really tricky. And so I would say try and diversify and really, you know, do your homework, because you want to be on board of this for the long run. Like I keep saying it, I've never been this excited about Bitcoin's long-term future ever. And then people call me and they're like, hey, you said that 6 months ago. It's like, yeah, but I'm more excited now. So I don't know. I think this is an amazing, you know, technology, an amazing community of developers. And so, you know, you want to stay on board, right? You don't want to, you know, get hacked or stolen from. So yeah, I would just say, you know, be careful. That's all I would say.
And you were going to say another point too, actually. I thought you said you had two things to say.
Oh, well, I kind of mixed them together, right? One is to be careful about the exchanges. The other is that I'm super excited about Bitcoin. All
right. Now, and the specific speech, what was the guy's name again? I'm going to find it. I'm going to link to it below. You can send the link. What was his name?
If you go to this, well, yeah, WIZSEC. WIZSEC, that's his Twitter handle. That's where he made his announcements. I don't know if he's linked to his latest presentation. There's some really interesting graphs there. Yeah, like definitely worth checking out. And he did it all in his free time, like incredible analysis.
Wow. Okay, so I will link to that. That is a good something, some homework for everyone out there. Okay, well, if the guests, do any of you guys have anything else to say? Because I'll wrap it up right now then. Just going once, going twice.
Just buy and hold, buy and hold.
All right, exactly. And strong hand, people. Strong hand. Okay, well, that show was awesome today. We're here every Friday. I don't know. Next week there's a Jewish holiday, so I think we're gonna have a really early show or a late show. I forgot. It's Rosh Hashanah, but we'll find a way around it. We'll be back next Friday. I do a new show here every day, but This Week in Bitcoin is every Friday. I thank all of our live viewers. I thank my guests. They rocked. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, this Rob Meister. Remember to subscribe.
One more thing, Adam.
Oh, there we go. Yes. Yes. Tell us tomorrow.
No, it's just a question. So that red thing on your T-shirt, like that red arc, does that represent a moon? Like what's that red thing on your T-shirt?
What's the red thing on my T-shirt?
Yep.
That is just well, people. It's making fun of Citibank. That's all. It's pointing up to the moon too, I guess. It's a directional thing. It's the moon. It's to the moon. There's some symbolism there. I don't know, what symbolism do you find behind it? Is there something specific?
I thought it was to the moon, but making fun of Citibank is undermining the bank. Like that's fun too.
Exactly. See, and some people are like, "Why is Adam wearing a Citibank shirt?" It's irony. It's irony, people. This is a Bitcoin shirt, baby. That's a Bitcoin shirt. Hey, so remember, people, also check out the links below, because I do link to yesterday's show. Hardly anyone got to see that because I did it like around midnight, so a lot of you missed that. And then Tuesday's show that we talked about the Ethereum hard fork that's coming up, and how there's going to be a user activated a community activated hard fork crypto dividend, possibly. We didn't get to talk about that today. We ran out of time. Hey, but anyway, pound that like button, everybody. I am out of here. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week and tomorrow. Bye-bye.